Welcome to the Top Dog Mindset Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of running a successful dog training business. I'm your host, Kevin, joined by my co-host, Angel. Together, we bring you expert insights, inspiring stories, and practical tips. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, we're here to provide you with the necessary information to build a thriving dog training company. So relax, join us with a cup of coffee as we explore the Top Dog Mindset Podcast.
All right, welcome in everybody to another episode of the Top Dog Mindset Podcast. Kevin, Angel, and Leanne today. And we got a really cool episode here for you guys. So we're going to be talking about something that, Angel, you had mentioned previous to this call about just something you were talking about with one of our clients. And yeah, I just thought this could kind of be a helpful topic. So everyone has all heard about, strategizing and setting goals in your business and, setting kind of check marks for yourself as far as I want to get here on this date and I want to be able to open this second location on this date and stuff like that. But I think sometimes people can kind of get a little bit too far ahead of themselves, right? I guess that's kind of what you were kind of talking about before this call. And sometimes people can get so focused on this end goal of having 20 different locations or opening up this second, part of the business and stuff. They really just kind of take their eye off the main thing. And so, Angel, why don't you just kind of talk a little bit about that and kind of how you've seen that kind of manifest for people in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I will start by saying that I think it's great to have this future vision and try to constantly keep your eye on whatever the end goal looks like for you. But like you said, focusing on that too much can start to take away from what's currently going on. So whether that is focusing on what's going on today, the leads that you've gotten today, have you followed up with everyone today, and then focusing on this week, focusing on this month, and even the previous 30 days. And so what I mean specifically about that is the leads that you've gotten, let's say over the last 30 days. People often are so focused on obviously the future and what's going on in the future, but also how many leads have I gotten today, or it's been slow today. And it's yeah, but we've gotten 60 leads over the last 30 days, so it's super important to capitalize on what you've gotten most recently. What I find often is people just kind of skipping over the important parts as far as, again, have you really taken advantage of every single lead that you've gotten over the last 30 days, over the past week. Obviously you want to reach goals for this month and all that kind of stuff, but also adding to that, running a business and everything else that you have going on, all the different hats that you have to wear. There's a lot of different places that you have to have your focus on. So I totally understand that, but I think kind of what we're getting at here is the most important thing is to focus on the money that's coming in right now, the leads that you can really take advantage of right now to bring in those sales in order to meet the goals to then expand a year from now or 2 years from now or whatever it is.
For sure. Yeah. And Leanne, I'd love to bring you in on this as well, because I know that you do so much coaching and helping people with strategizing for their business and stuff like that. And I think what we're really trying to get at here is there is the future and game planning for that and having all these big ambitious goals and dreams. But then there's the reality of the day-to-day operations and just needing to do things on a day-to-day basis in order to be able to get to that future goal and dream. And so sometimes you can kind of just get so focused on what it's going to be like in a couple of years and how cool is it going to be when I have all these team members and I have this new facility and all that stuff that comes along with running a big dog training business. But you can kind of not necessarily, you can fall out of the habit of doing the day-to-day work to kind of get yourself to that place that you want to get to. Leanne, what are your feelings on that? Do you have any thoughts on this, and kind of have you seen this kind of impact other businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to a few clients. They want to, create Facebook groups and have a big community and, do all these community outreach and network and do all these things. But again, if they're not even answering their phone or not returning back their lead, how are you going to expand your company? You know what I mean? How are you going to make your first hire? How are you going to make things easier to pass off to people? You know what I mean? So it's like the first thing you need to do is to answer your phone, book your consults, close those sales. And a lot of time I feel like there is a lot of hesitancy of like, well, I'll just call them back, or I'll just get back to them later. I'm too busy right now. You know what I mean? You're so far in the future trying to plan your big goals and your dreams and everything like that, that you lose sight of like, okay, what's really important is nurturing my leads so I can get to that point.
Yeah, for sure. Really well said. Yeah, there's kind of a really crude term, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time if this offends anybody listening to the podcast. But there's a term called mental masturbation, and what that means is you can do a lot of reading and like watching content, and it makes you feel really good about yeah, I'm really doing this. I'm really running this business, and I just listened to this really awesome podcast, this 3-hour podcast with Jeff Bezos and how he grows Amazon, and I read Alex Ramosey's most recent book, and you can do all that and kind of give yourself the illusion of I'm an entrepreneur and I'm really building this business. And yeah, that term always stuck with me. I know it's like really kind of nasty, but that's the only thing that really does it justice.
I feel
But
so immature right now trying to hold in my laugh.
yeah, what is so funny about that, Angel? Please enlighten all of us. But yeah, I mean it's really spot on because I've even fallen into that habit sometimes too, where you can spend your day feeling like I'm being productive here because I'm consuming all this content, doing all this stuff, and it makes you feel good. It gives you that feeling of being productive, but in reality, you're not actually being productive. And the more important thing to do with your time, if you're going to be prioritizing your time, is, Leanne, to your point, like picking up your phone when the phone rings, calling your leads if you need to follow up with somebody, and just trying to really hammer your pipeline. It's not that this other stuff isn't important. It's not that it's not worth listening to these other really prolific entrepreneurs and learning from them and stuff. There's a time and place for all of that. But if you're substituting that in for just the work that needs to be done and the work that needs to be done not getting done, then you're doing yourself and your business a massive disservice.
It's all about like completing each step to the manual, I guess you could call it.
Hmm.
If you're like doing a recipe and you just randomly skip over a few steps, your cake is going to turn out like shit. You know what I mean? And even like talking about other parts, like the sales process, for instance, we've talked about this recently, but like the sales process is more than just talking to someone about your programs and giving them the price. Like there's so many steps to it. First step is answering the phone, building a little bit of rapport on the phone and finding out briefly what they need help with, scheduling the consultation, going into the consultation, building rapport there, answering questions, asking questions and all that kind of stuff, going over programs and then trying to sell it. But oftentimes people can unintentionally, sometimes intentionally, but like not really realizing how important each little step is, but sometimes like skipping some of those. So whether it's answering the phone and then within the first 15 minutes, telling them what program you recommend and giving them the price, like you just skip so many steps, or just straight up not answering the phone and automating everything to where you just text them the prices and the programs and all of that. Like you're skipping so many important steps to the sales process. And that same thing for growing your business. I've even heard, or we all have, with like especially new business owners will like right off the bat say that their goal is to eventually like step away from training and just like hire a whole team. And I love hearing people's goals. Like I love going over all of that stuff and hearing like where they want to end up and especially helping them get to that point. But so early on, it's like we have so many steps that we need to do before we get to that point. Like right now, I care about, you being as successful as you possibly can be for yourself, and then getting to that point where then you can start making a bunch of hires and then eventually expand and, opening other locations and stuff.
Yeah, and I'm going to tread lightly here because I don't want to blanket statement this too much, but it is a little bit of a red flag to me when I talk to somebody who's starting a business and their main focus is like getting to the end goal of not having to work in the business.
Mhm.
Because it's like, how is that going to feel in 6 months, a year and a half when you're not there yet? And, you're starting to get a little bit tired and you're starting to get a little bit burned out. And that initial rush that you got of starting a business is kind of, wearing off. And so I think that you need to really set out to build a business for the right reasons. And every person I've met that is like the most successful entrepreneur, people who have businesses that make $1 million a month, stuff like that, they're not obsessively trying to get out of the business and having to do work. They're trying to find new ways to grow the company. Like, they're a really good operator. They're a really good CEO. They're really good at like thinking of the next thing that needs to get done to continue to grow the company instead of just like, oh, how do I get myself out of ever having to work again? You know? That's
Mhm.
kind of like a fallacy that I think a lot of people fall into. It's like there's that book, The 4 Hour Work Week, great book, but and I think there's a lot of really good principles in there, but I think a lot of people take that book and Tim Ferriss's whole like ideology and go like, it's about working the least amount as you possibly can. And I just think that you're in for a rude awakening with all that stuff. So Liam, with that being said, I'm sure you hear people say stuff like that too, and just looking to hire and outsource everything. I mean, what do you think about that? Like, what are your thoughts on that? What have you seen from other people?
Yeah, I definitely hear that a lot. It's like, I want to hire a VA. I want to hire someone to do all my sales for me. Like, I don't want to do sales anymore. But again, like, if you are not good at selling yourself, how is this person going to be good at selling for you? You know what I mean? Unless they are a really good salesperson, have like years and years of experience. Well, then again, like, can you afford to even pay that person if you yourself are not answering your phone, not answering your leads, not getting back to them as fast as you can before they go on to the next dog trainer they're trying to contact? So like, you can get ahead of your being like, I'm just going to hire someone to help me. But again, if you're not even doing the work yourself, how can you expect this person to do the work for you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Angel. I know you have something you want to add in here.
Yeah, to add to that, Leanne, like I think too, like even if you are in the position, like the financial position to be able to hire someone, do you have like your process and your systems perfected in order to pass that on to the next person? Because if you don't, you're hiring people and you're both just kind of winging it. Like you're winging it at teaching someone how to do a consultation, and that person is basically winging it because they are, walking into this position where there were no existing systems and processes. Then I don't feel like that is going to take you very far. Or you're just going to be in this like very long state of constantly like figuring it out and trying to perfect it.
Yeah. And then you
Yeah.
can also try to like blame that person, like, oh, they weren't very good or they didn't work out. But then, again, if you don't have structure to your business because you didn't actually figure that out, again, like the only really person to blame is yourself.
Right. You need to be able to lead by example with your company and the people who work with you. You can't be the person who just is like, I don't like doing that. I'm just going to hire somebody to do that. And so that I never need to like focus on it again. I mean, Steve Jobs once said, like, I don't hire people so I can tell them what to do. I hire them so that they can kind of like fix the problem and show me what to do. And there's something to that, I think, of like really hiring high-end talent, people who are really good. You don't need to babysit and stuff. But I just think to what you guys are talking about, if you're the type of entrepreneur who's like, I hate sales, I hate dealing with the clients, and I'm just going to hire somebody to do that, I just think that that's going to rub off on your staff, and people are going to go like, the owner of the company doesn't even care about this. They don't even care about, trying to, close as many people as possible and track their numbers and nurture and follow up with leads and, how to handle an upset client and stuff like that. It kind of reminds me of like George Washington. The reason that he was like, people were dying to make him the first president of the United States was not just because he was like a good dude, but it was because like he was a general during the Revolutionary War, and he'd be like on horseback during a battle with like bullets whizzing by him, and he was like a badass. And it's like, we want this guy to lead our country. So it's the same thing in your company. If you're kind of like cowering in fear, like, oh, I don't like sales, I hate dealing with these clients, or oh, I don't want to work with that dog, that type of dog always annoys me and stuff like that, guess what? Your team is going to feel that way too. Versus if you're somebody who's like, hey, we're going to work hard here. We're going to try and do everything we can to nurture our pipeline and get as much out of these leads as we possibly can. And we're going to try to find a way to make it work with this client, although they're not an ideal client. And, that's the type of type of person, I should say, that you're going to rub off on your staff and they're going to want to emulate you. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I've been in positions like that before too, where the management wasn't necessarily setting a good example, And it's like I know that maybe they have a different position than me and I have like different job duties and all that kind of stuff, but having like a good not only good management, but someone who is going to like physically show you the ropes and not just kind of like stand there and boss you around, but again, physically show you the ropes, not afraid to get their hands dirty in the tasks that you are also doing, because that is setting a good example. But when you see your management, not to say that I did this, but I know it's probably a thing. Like when you're seeing your management like not set a good example, or just kind of like, getting lazy, let's say in this case with following up with people, like your employees will start thinking that that's an okay thing to do as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like monkey see, monkey do. Pretty much as simple as that?
Yeah.
Leanne, what are your thoughts on this? Anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I see in every industry, like successful companies have strong leadership, they have strong structure and, SOPs in place so that no one is confused on what the actual process is. So I think like with anyone who is, starting their business, they have to do every single task in order to fully understand what their process is going to be so that they can pass it on properly to any staff member they hire. But in order to do that, you actually have to do the dirty work, as Angel said, of getting their hands dirty, figure out, be in that messy process with yourself, trying new things out. You know what I mean? Of like, hey, yeah, like you had 60 leads, but you've only reached out to half of them. And what, you contacted them once? Did you try to contact them multiple times? Did you do multiple touch points at different parts of the day? Maybe they're working. Like I've definitely been the victim of like having someone call me and I'm like having every intention of calling them back, but life just happens and I don't and I forget and then they never follow up and then out of sight, out of mind. And
Mhm.
I feel like with like dog trainers and their clients, like, yeah, people work, people have busy schedules, people have children. So like you need to do everything you can to reach out different points, checking in over multiple weeks. I think I was telling Kevin this like when I first got in, when I was a client, I was working in the fashion industry, and the trainer that came over, I ultimately booked, came over to an in-person consultation for free. And she, as this is about what, 8, 9 years ago, when she told me it was like $150 an hour, I like laughed and I was like, that's crazy. Like that's a ridiculous amount of money per hour. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. Like, I'll just like go to YouTube. I'll just look to Instagram for free advice, anything like everything like that. And so it was like, you know, she thought that was the end of it, but she kept like texting me, I think every 2 or 3 weeks, just checking in to see how me and my dog were doing. And ultimately, I hit the last straw with my dog, and I was like, you know what, $150 is not so bad anymore because my dog is literally trying to kill my other dog. So I'm just gonna go with this. And I called her back, versus other people I'd initially called. They did phone consults with me for like 10 minutes, and they basically,
Mhm.
you're doing everything wrong with your dog. It's not in a crate. You don't have your dog on a leash. I'm like, I don't know what's going on with my dog. Like, I adopted this dog. I have no idea what her history is. You know what I mean? And my other dog was perfect. So yeah, like again, going back to it, this person reached out multiple times, just seeing how I'm doing over the course of like 3 months or 3 weeks. I can't remember. It was so long ago. But again, nurturing your leads will ultimately pay off.
100%. Yeah, and I what I always think about with running a business is there's going to be a period of time where you're going to get really, really good people on your team that are going to be able to handle a lot of stuff for you, and you're not going to have to be so in the weeds training every single dog, or selling every single person, or handling every single difficult client or something like that. And it's going to free you up to do other stuff in your business. But in the beginning, when it's just you, it goes without saying you do not have that luxury yet. And so running your own business, a lot of it comes down to just being kind of the sacrificial lamb in a way, and not doing what you want to do, but doing what's required of you. And that's what I always think about, like when business is really hard and we're kind of going through like a phase where it's like it feels like growing is really difficult and there's just a lot of hurdles to get over. It's like, yeah, don't think about like what do I want to be doing here? Just think about what is required of me to get the business to the next level here. And it always reminds me of this story. One time I was listening to a podcast with Mark Cuban, and he was talking about when he had first bought the Dallas Mavericks, and sales were way down for them. That the ticket sales every single year were kind of shrinking, and people weren't that interested in the Mavericks anymore. And he bought the franchise and was like, "What is going on here?" And he's like, why are people not like excited to come to the games? And so he had just sold his previous tech company for however much, hundreds of millions of dollars or something like that. And he bought the Mavericks. And within like a couple of weeks of going in there, he realized like this sales team is not motivated. They're not like closing people. They're not calling their list. And so he's like, I sat down with my office door open and I grabbed a Rolodex of leads and started calling people up and saying like, hey, Mr. Smith, this is Mark Cuban. I'm the owner of the Mavericks. Would you be interested in like repurchasing your tickets for this season? I'll tell you what, we have all these really new, exciting things that we have going on. And, I think the team's going to be much better than they were in years past, and selling people. And he's like, that lit, the sales team on fire, where they were like, holy hell, like the owner of the company, this guy's who's effectively a billionaire, is grabbing the phone and doing this. And so people notice that stuff. They need to be led. They need to see that somebody really cares here. And so this is, I guess, just like a call to arms for anybody who has a team right now and you feel like they are not living up to the standard that you want to see them live up to. It's like, well, they may just be falling to whatever lowest common denominator of standard that you've allowed and set for them. And for the people who are, looking to hire people in the future, it's like, start setting the standard for yourself now. Hold yourself to a standard that you would hold other people to. And so I just think that's a really good kind of way to look at it. If you're kind of in a place right now where you're kind of stagnating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really, really good example that you just brought up with Mark Cuban. Like
Yeah.
like you said, he's a billionaire and he found like a flaw in his process. And instead of just like blaming and hounding them and saying, get your shit together, he decided to step in and take it over.
Yeah.
100%. Competition's a really good thing too. Like, people cap themselves and think, oh, this is as good as I can do. And I'm already calling my leads. I'm already working hard. And then you sit around somebody else who's really working hard and operating on a different wavelength than you. And you kind of go, oh, wow, like there's a lot I'm leaving in the tank. You know what I mean? Yeah. So listen, we're at the hour here, so we're gonna have to wrap this episode up. But I appreciate you guys both joining us, Leanne. It's always cool having you on these episodes too. So we'll do this again very soon. But as always, we appreciate you guys listening and giving us your support. And if there's anybody that you feel like would benefit from listening to one of these episodes, please do us a favor and share this. It's obviously in our group. It's on Spotify, YouTube as well. So make sure to pass this around if there's another dog trainer that you feel like could benefit from this. And we will see you guys all very soon in the next episode. See you guys.
Hey, guys.